Hey, what's up? It's Audra. I'm so excited to be making this video. In it, I'm going to be showing you how I add depth into hair color to create a very lived-in, dimensional look that is easily worn for 4 or 5 months at a time, and it should grow out perfectly soft and blended. I decided to use a level 7 natural in her hair to add the dimension because the blonde was so light that had grown out, and her 3 inches of roots are probably about a level 8 with a gold base to them. So I kind of wanted it to blend in, and I feather that in, and so when it grows out as it fades, it's going to be a perfectly smooth grow out where you won't see any lines. All right, I'm really excited, so let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is make horizontal zigzag sections. I like to use bigger zigzag sections to create more dimension in the hair color. And we're adding depth. And we'll do it again, sectioning off those tops of the zigzag sections to be created depth, and we're going to add lightness to the bottom section of the zigzag. That's going to be our balayage. Once again, adding that depth. As we move toward the top of the crown, we're going to begin to do diagonal zigzag sections. Still removing the top of those mountain peaks. Adding lightness. Again, adding depth to those zigzag peaks. Continuing with our diagonal zigzag slices through the crown. Adding lightness. I like to use my balayage brush on the side as I paint in the lightener. Continuing along the crown with zigzag partings, sectioning to add in lightener. And adding in depth to create that lived-in hair color. Zigzag partings. I like to make the zigzag partings get smaller toward the top of the head. The bigger the partings, the more dimension you see, and the smaller the partings, less dimension, the more blended the hair color appears. Adding in that dimension at the top is really important. If you don't add enough dimension at the top, then the hair looks really blended and you can't really see the balayage that good. The more darkness you add, the more the brightness stands out. The diagonal parts that go across the crown create that balance that you need between darkness and lightness, even though it doesn't seem like it would.
And last section should end with your darkness on the top. Your depth should end on the top part of the section. Highlights, the lightness ends on the top of the section, but on balayage, typically the darkness ends on the top. I like to pull out the pieces on the bottom behind the ear just so I can section it and give it a really big blonde pop that comes out and falls forward when you wear your hair down. Here I'm painting in that little bit of lightness so it'll fall forward. Again, using the side of my brush to paint in the balayage highlights. If you haven't tried the From Our brush, it's super awesome. You should really try it. Here we go, starting with the top section. I like to base a part diagonal in the direction that the hair grows on the face. So see how this is diagonal right here, and then I take zigzag parts. Just like that. So we'll start smaller on the face and we move larger as we move toward the back. Again, we'll take out the mountain peak tops. Separate that for our darkness, and this will be our lightness down here. It already has enough lightness, so we're not going to add any in. We're just going to go ahead and add that depth. We'll bring that lightness up as we move up the head, but as far as balayage goes, we don't mind if there's more depth toward the bottom. Again, diagonal zigzag. We're going to remove off that mountain peak. I like to call them mountains and valleys. I feel like valleys are really lit up. It's hard to see the stars because of all the street lights. The mountains, it gets darker as you go up toward the sky, and so the mountains are darker and the valleys are lighter, like urban living. And again, painting up some lightness, balayage. Even that little bit of depth. And now painting in that dimension. And again, moving up the head on that diagonal part. Zigzag sections. Still getting smaller toward the top. Adding in that brightness. I bring it up closer toward the face. The smaller the weave is toward the face, the more brightness we'll be able to produce on the front of the face line. Here we are adding some depth. Don't be afraid to add depth. Adding that lightness toward the face on a diagonal slant. The struggle gets real with these foils. Sometimes I wonder if I'm the only person who struggles with the pop-up foils. No, I'm not part of the Addams family. That's actually hands that are connected to a body. AKA my assistant husband. Awesome. Now we're basically going to do the exact same thing on the other side. Just change the direction of those diagonal parts, and don't forget to change the direction of the diagonal when you bring up that lightener. Zigzag diagonal parts. Separating the mountain peak from the valley. And adding that little bit of brightness into that bottom section. On that diagonal, bringing it up closer to the face. Make sure you saturate really well. You really shouldn't see any hair coming through the brightness wherever you want it to be bright. I use foil in this technique just because we were adding so much dimension and so much depth and so very little lightness. I didn't want the dark to bleed onto the previously blonded hair. Continuing up the head. If Adriana didn't part her hair down the middle, I would make that top section according to where she parts the hair. I would still do the same concept of going up the head and adding the lightness and the darkness. It would just be an off-centered part at the top. Here's my dog again. She has to keep coming in and checking on us the whole time. Isn't she cute? Her name's Sugar. here we go. Parting off that hair again. Taking off those mountain top peaks, depthening them. Deepening them with this level 7. Saturation is really important too. Make sure you're getting that depth all the way through the hair when you're putting it in there. If you don't, it'll be splotchy. And just a little bit more lightness at the top. All right, adding that depth once again. Last part of this section. Now we're going to move to the front of the hair. We're going to focus on that money piece. Pull it down in the zigzag section. We're just going to take out those baby hairs in the front that are kind of wispy. That gives us our little tiny bit of depth in the front, and it also doesn't grow out with a line. Those little baby hairs. Now we're going to add our lightener. Balayaging it in using the side of our brush. We're going to take it pretty much all the way to the top of the foil. On that front piece, we want it to be really heavy. So I took out very small weave for the depth. This is how we get that pop of blonde around the front of the face frame. Like I said, if I was going to do like a side part, I would have parted it on a different part of the head, but since she does a middle part, we can part it just straight down the center. Just part accordingly. And we're adding that tiny bit of depth. Super important to make that pop right there in the front, that we have a strong piece of depth right behind it. Again, we're going to take a decent size triangular zigzag. We're going to pull off those mountain peaks. And now we're going to work with that valley, bringing up that lightness. As we go from the front of the head toward the crown, we're going to bring that lightness up less far every time we make a section. And that will make it appear that the color is dropping as it's falling down from the front to the back of the head. You don't have to push that lightness all the way through. You want to make sure that that blonde for the balayage is really just on the surface. I'm not pushing that liner all the way through the hair. I'm just making sure that the side I'm working on is saturated really well. That I can't see any hair color coming through it, but I'm not pushing that blonde through the hair to the other side. And here we are adding our depth. Yeah. Triangular zigzag sections. Make sure they're prominent. That's going to give you your dimension. See how thick that is? That's your dimension in there. If you don't do them thick enough, you won't be able to see it good. It'll just look like highlights. Now we're not going to go as far up this time. We're keeping it drop down a little further away from the scalp, just so when the hair falls, when it's down, it begins to have that lightness drop down from the front to the back. you feel like it got too far up, you can always rub it out, but do it immediately and make sure that you've got it really clean so that it doesn't produce any kind of orangey tones. Make sure that what you want to be lifted is really saturated well, and continuing all the way to that back part of the crown. Like I said, I like to start with those tiny zigzags toward the front, and as I work my way toward the back, I make them larger. Bringing up that balayage. How thick you make the sections has a lot to do with how much hair a person has. She has a ton of fine hair, so feels like the hair color process goes on for days to get it all saturated good. Moving around to the back of the head just so I can see. Not quite the same doing it in my home as it is in the salon with my chair that rotates and moves up and down. So we kind of have to improvise. But you don't get to have sugar come in and visit you every 15 minutes in the salon, so that's a trade-off. The dog keeps checking on the progress. So cute. Still adding in that depth. And we are almost through the application process. Bringing up that little bit of lightness. Notice I'm not taking it all the way to the root. Just want to blend that in. We don't want to take the lightness down too far on the previously blonded hair so that it's discolored. We want to kind of keep it so that it's smooth. Surprisingly enough, I didn't use any toner on this application process. All I did was wash it with purple shampoo at the end. I like to mix my purple shampoo half and half with my Olaplex shampoo. That's just the personal preference. I do it in the salon and I do it at home. Being that last bit of depth, we're going to take it down. At the top, I really just like to kind of feather it up. I don't take the depth really saturated toward the root. I'm just going to feather it into her roots because I want this to grow out really smooth. As that level 7 end fades out, it's going to fade out to a warm level 8, which is going to match up to her natural level 8 really well. So it's going to grow out with a really clean transition. It won't require color correction, even though she probably will want something different by the next time we change it. And here's the outcome. Beautiful.